first big person on my channel, and it's Tom Luongo, a geostrategist and political analysis guy. He does a blog called Gold Goats and Guns. I'm one of his patrons, and I'm very happy that he agreed to sit down and talk to us. And we're not going to talk about normal stuff, the end, the fate of America, whatever that happens going on. We're going to talk about something really important. We're going to talk about Star Wars. And we came up with this idea because I had just watched my favorite Star Wars movie, Solo, again last week. I watched it a couple times, and it's just so good. Like we're both Gen Xers, and what happens with Gen X is our lives have been revolved around a couple big projects. One of them is Star Wars, and I remember being a little kid, 5 years old in '83, going through Return of the Jedi, and every time Darth Vader came on the screen, I was covering my eyes. And then we get what I think is like a very small golden age when Disney took over Star Wars and was giving us the first real movies we were getting for the first time. The Force Awakens was pretty good. It set up a lot of interesting things that, of course, were ignored and we never got the payoffs. We got Rogue One, which I do have some problems with that movie, and we might talk about it later. But then we got Solo, that unfortunately got punished because of the Revenge of the Sith, or whatever the hell that movie was called.
The Last Jedi.
Yeah, The Last
Jedi.
Yeah. And so we got kind of screwed by The Last Jedi. And so that movie got punished by all the fans not showing up. Also, Disney didn't do any favors by putting it on Memorial Day weekend. But I got to say, I don't know who Lorton Miller are, but when they brought in Ron Howard to basically run this legendary film director, I was never so excited for a Star Wars project. Because Ron Howard, the guy who, an Academy Award-winning director, guy who brought us Apollo 13, and he was going to come in and do a Star Wars movie, and he delivers, because he delivers on what I consider is the classic formula. We ever since George Lucas did the special editions and screwed up the first Star Wars movie by having Greedo shoot first, we needed to reestablish why Han was such a badass. And when he does what he does, the movie's been out for 10 years now, so I don't mind spoiling it for people. But when he shoots Woody Harrelson's character, just out of the blue, and Woody Harrelson's like, you had to do it because I was about to shoot you, and just establishing him as a badass and creating the storyline and giving us such a great, powerful Star Wars movie that I really enjoy. I call it my favorite. I don't think it's the best. I still think Maintain Empire Strikes Back is the best Star Wars movie, but Solo is my favorite because I love caper movies. I'm a spy guy, so half of intelligence work is basically continent scams and screwing people over. When I watched Taylor of Panama for the first time, I'm like, this movie is not a fiction. This is a documentary on how these people do these things. So, I let you go off and do the thing there, Tom.
Well, David, so it's interesting. You and I have a different perspective on Disney Star Wars, Disney's takeover of Star Wars, and mine is. I'm going to say first off, I agree with you. I happened to rewatch Solo the other day in preparation of going to see The Mandalorian and Grogu because, it's probably in tone the closest. Solo is the closest in tone to The Mandalorian, to what I was expecting Jon Favreau to do with The Mandalorian and Grogu. I was not wrong. If you've not seen it, it's a great little family movie, and everybody should go see it. I would say little, but I mean, in the grand scheme of things, it's not. It is not the kind of mythology, of mythology that the rest of Star Wars purports to, aspire to, and I don't, and I mean that explicitly because there's been a whole lot of overreach about how much mythology is really in Star Wars and how people take it as a religion and a variety of other things. It's like at the end of the day, it was a very important moment for people of our age cohort, and it was a touchstone, and it was a thing really that I think helped set us up psychologically for the battle that we're now living through today, politically and within the culture war and everything else, because we as 9-year-olds learned that we can go out and overcome every adversity imaginable, including our our surrogate parents being killed, and then go and blow up the Death Star and take on the worst people on the planet and in the world, right? In the
Mhm.
universe. And but it's not going to be easy. And Luke's path to, redeeming his dad and his own self-actualization and everything else is very difficult. And it's a great story, and it was never done in film before, or and it set the template for how to do it in the future. I'm a big fan of saying that, like, Babylon 5 was the first novel on television to prove to TV execs that we could do long form story content on television. And that's why Babylon 5 was cheered on by its cadre of fans at the time when it was coming out, and why we loved it so much. And it's the same thing with Star Wars. Think back to when you were 9, 10, 12 years old. Star Wars was kind of like underground filmmaking, while still at the same time being this cultural phenomenon, right? Because I don't know, that's the way I always looked at it. I'm like, we're doing shit here that no one else has ever done before, right?
Right.
And this was important. And so for us, it was that, like, and I mean, it was funny. I was chatting with Dexter White this morning about this, happened to come up in conversation. And I said, God, and the Star Wars fandom is a mess and all these other things. But I said, but it's the same way that, I'm a lifelong Rush fan, the band, and I'm a
Yeah.
lifelong Star Wars fan. And they have very similar demographics, and they have very similar ethoses and psychologies, which is that Rush was the underground band, was the geeks band, right?
Yeah.
That was the thing, is like, in Star Wars was the geeks, apotheosis. It's like, look, it was a crossover hit, and a cultural phenomenon, but for the geeks, it was a thing. It was still theirs no matter what happened, because once the movies were gone, and there was going to be no more Star Wars. The only people keeping it alive were the guys like us,
Yeah.
and who were writing fan fiction, publishing that fan fiction through Lucas Books, playing the role playing game and everything else. But we understood that what Lucas achieved was something monumental in film history, and maybe it would be replicated again, maybe it wouldn't.
Mhm.
And doesn't matter. And then when we move forward in time. So okay, so now let's fast forward to 2012 or whenever it is, 2013, when he sells Lucasfilm to Disney. And Disney's immediately going to turn what was a special, precious thing into a commodity.
Yeah.
Right. We knew that was going to happen. Lucas had already been setting that up with doing the Clone Wars on Cartoon Network, after the prequel films were done. And there was clearly still an appetite for this stuff right now.
Yeah. It was kind of Rupert Murdoch actually found out afterwards that they were
Mm,
still Star Wars, and he said, "If I had only known it was available, because
I
I
would
would
have
have
bought it.
bought that up." And when I went into the Force Awakens, I really noticed that it didn't start with the 20th Century Fox band there.
Logo,
That had
right?
voice.
Well, and there were, yeah, and 20th Century Fox. See, that's an interesting thing, right? 20th Century Fox was only the distributor for the last two movies,
Right.
right? It was the primary. Alan Jr. was the primary guy who got it done, who got it at Fox, got it the budget, and made the movie. Under it was, and effectively it was co-produced by 20th Century Fox and Lucasfilm. Star Wars was. The
Yeah.
Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi were independent movies.
Right.
Everybody forgets this, that this is a very important part of the story. Okay, so when Lucasfilm is sold, he sells it to Bob Iger over at Disney, and like at that point, I'm like, I'm still in the mode of the Phantom Menace. When I went into the Phantom Menace in 1999, I know I've told the story before, but I'll tell it again, which is that, it's been years, that I I didn't expect it to be good.
Hmm.
I didn't. I didn't expect it to be good because George Lucas hadn't directed a movie in 20 years.
Right.
And there ain't been and there's a very short list of directors that have taken a 20-year hiatus and made a good movie afterwards.
Right.
Very few. And actually I think that list is zero.
I think
Depending
there
on
was one
whether or
or
not
two
you're
that
like,
might have done it,
depending
but
on, yeah,
they were part of the blacklist.
Right. Well, no, I mean, what I'm saying, I'm getting out. I'm talking about like guys like Terrence Malick, and like
Mm.
if unless you think like the Thin Red Line, or yeah, the Thin Red Line is a good movie, which I don't. I think it's a piece of shit.
Oh,
But
really?
if
Okay.
you think, I despise that movie. I think
Hmm.
it's just bad. It's just bad French tone poetry. It's like it's not a film. It's
Okay.
just it's not a
I've only
movie.
watched a bit of it. It was the only part I've really watched is Woody Harrelson's death and the guy arguing with the colonel.
Mm.
That's
Yeah, well, that was it. I think that's all that's memorable. It was like Nick Nolte was memorable, and the rest of it was just, it was unwatchable garbage as far as
mm.
I was concerned. Okay.
Yep.
And, I walked out of the theater, my wife and I both walked out of the theater going, there was a movie here. And I rarely do that. And I'm usually and I'm extreme. You have to understand, folks, I'm extremely generous. I don't go into movies with a chip on my shoulder
Mm.
because why? If I'm going to use 2 hours of my life to go ingest a story, I'm going to go in generously and hope that I get entertained, because what's the point of going in with a chip on your shoulder and saying you're not going to be entertained, which is 90% of what Star Wars, anti-Disney Star Wars fandom does. They go in with a chip on their shoulder. They have no interest in actually enjoying the movie that's in front of them. They just want to, gore their ox one more time that the expanded universe was jettisoned as non-canon, or whatever it is that their complaint is. And there's about a bazillion of them.
Yeah, I went on
Leia,
a
everything from
channel and
Leia Poppins
defended
all the way
Disney
backwards. I don't
Star
give a shit.
Wars
Yeah.
from being murdered because of that. And me and my team were the only ones that there was like 13 charges. We're the only ones who managed to get a hung jury.
Right.
Because I said to my defenders, like, this is a black guy in Alabama in the 60s accused of raping a white woman has a better chance than we do. So let's just be funny.
I mean, and so like when I think about this, I'm like, so I've always looked at every Star Wars after Return of the Jedi as a gift. I've just always looked at it that way. When The Phantom Menace came out, I'm like, I hope that this movie is for the 9-year-olds of today as important as it was for me when I was 10. I didn't see I was 9 when Star Wars came out. I didn't see it until I was 10 because it took a year and a half it took 14 months for it to come to within 20 miles of my house where my parents would take me to go see it. Okay, because it played in New York City, it played in Poughkeepsie at the drive-in, it played all over the place, but for a year. And it didn't come to Newburgh. I grew up in the Highland Mills. It didn't come to Newburgh. It was about 15, 20 minutes away.
Yeah, I'd watch
Until
it on
July.
CBC.
Until July of 2000, I'm sorry, of 1978. I still remember to this day. We went, it was July 10th, 1978, went to see the Squire 2 in Newburgh, New York. My mom fell asleep and my dad and I had a great time. Now, and then I went to see it again like 2 days later. And, if I saw it once on that run, I saw it 4 or 5 times, right? And I saw it on every re-release as it came out through, the future years, all the way up until I think the last time I think I saw Star Wars in the theaters, other than the special editions, was whenever Nighthawks came out. So that was the year of Excalibur, Nighthawks, and so 1981.
Whoa.
Because my dad and I went to the movies that day. I went to see Star Wars. He went to see Nighthawks with Sylvester Stallone and Rutger Hauer. And then
It's a great movie. I really recommend it for people.
It is an excellent movie. And then we came out of the theater and I went, Dad, can I go watch that again? And he went, okay. And then he went and watched John Borman's Excalibur. He didn't want to watch Star Wars again. He was a Star Wars fan, but he didn't want to watch it for the 14th time with me. So he's like, this was the thing. So he went and watched Excalibur. I watched Star Wars again. We had a great time. It was a great day. And then we went and got dinner afterwards and had a great day with my dad. So, but fast forwarding to this, so these are all the memories that coming into 1999. And I'm like, well, if the movie doesn't suck, I'll be impressed. And the first 20 minutes are good.
Mm-hmm.
And I went in and I enjoyed myself because I said, I'm going to will myself to be 9 years old and enjoy this movie. I saw The Phantom Menace once in the theater. I saw it 6 times. I didn't appreciate. I wanted to like it more than it was. I'm not going to lie to sit there and lie and say I didn't defend these movies. I went to saw Attack of the Clones 4 times in the theaters, and I defended it up until I finally got 10 years away from it. I'm like, okay, no, these movies aren't particularly very good. And I realized something about The Phantom Menace at some point after it came out on DVD, and I watched it a bunch, and I said, oh, I know what the problem with this movie is, because at that point I now had done some work in screenwriting, and I had learned the basics of screenwriting and read Story by Bob McKeon. Actually, my wife and I actually, wrote a draft of a screenplay for a project that never got off the ground, and blah, 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 blah. So I understood what was happening. And I realized very quickly that The Phantom Menace's problem was that it never committed to one story arc versus the other, right?
Yep.
We didn't know who the main character was. And so what happened was we kept getting pushed and pulled between Amidala or Qui-Gon or Anakin back and forth, and there was no structure to the story that made any sense. And so therefore people were getting bored. It wasn't particularly compelling, and then everybody just complained about Jar Jar, and rightly so, because if the movie had been structured properly, Jar Jar would have been C-3PO. He's just as ridiculous as C-3PO is in the original trilogy, but because the movies are so well written.
Now, a friend of mine said this movie does not happen without Jar Jar Binks. He's the connective tissue.
All right. So that's one. That's like one of those things. Attack of the Clones is a mess editorially and whatnot. And Revenge of the Sith is not a bad movie. And
it is not. No, I don't
think it's a great movie. I don't think it's a great movie. I think it's okay.
Yeah, a friend of mine who's not a big Star Wars guy like I am, though he is up there. He really does go into the defense of that because he's like, because of the political shenanigans that happens there with the Senate. So wait a minute, the Jedi just go from do a hard right where they're like, oh, I guess Palpatine might be a Sith dealer. I guess we're going to have to take out take them out. What if the Republic doesn't go along with that? I guess we take them out too. And I'm like, holy crap.
Yeah, I mean, well, the way Lucas structured the 3 prequel films because he didn't have them plotted out from a scene perspective. He didn't write all 3 outlines really. He wrote them individually, and he didn't even know that Count Dooku was a character until he started writing Attack of the Clones. I can go into all of this shit, I'm pointing all these little things out to remind everybody that those who complain about the sequel films not having a plan, go fuck yourself. Because Lucas didn't have a plan. Lucas did not have a plan for Return to the Jedi, for Christ's sake. Go watch the movie from a structuralist perspective and realize that it's a 3-act movie where the first 2 acts do not matter.
Yeah.
We could just as easily have had a third film that was 45 minutes long to an hour long, 10 minutes worth of setup, 10 minutes on Endor where, he and Leia and Yoda do the thing, and then he's off to go redeem his dad, and the movie would be over. The first hour and 10 minutes of that movie are irrelevant. They're entertaining, but they're not relevant. So, because Han Solo has
Have you seen some of the deleted scenes from Return of the Jedi?
I have, and I still don't find it all that compelling. Look,
I know he's making out with Leia at one point, who's supposedly his sister.
I know for a fact that Larry Kasdan wrote the screenplay in 3 weeks. Okay, we're not talking. These are screenplays. Screenplays usually take 2 years to write. Okay, they don't take 3 weeks to write. The fact that the Empire Strikes Back was written as quickly as it was also written in like some retardedly short period of time. That Leigh Brackett and then Larry Kasdan came in and wrote the screenplay, but Leigh Brackett did the story. And of course, Leigh Brackett, that would be the screenwriter of The Big Sleep with Humphrey Bogart.
Okay,
that's who was shaping The Empire Strikes Back. Okay, we forget all this. Everybody wants to
part of The Big Sleep. So
yeah, so everybody was, like looking back on Larry Kasdan, and Kasdan was young and hungry, and yada yada yada, and he did great work. And I'm not taking anything away from The Empire Strikes Back, aside from the fact that Larry Kasdan still doesn't understand how big space is. But I don't even want to go. Let's not even go there.
Yeah.
So, the plot holes in The Empire Strikes Back are so big that West End Games had to create the concept of the hyperdrive backup in order to get Han, Leia, and Chewie from Hoth or from a Noate, which they're in a different system. How do they get there to Bespin? It's not possible. Let's not.
I did not realize that was why we put that in WG West End Games, but I do have all the books. So.
Very obvious, right? To me, I was like, oh, we have to have hyperdrive backups because two reasons. One, nobody would actually put it makes sense that they would put in a slow hyperdrive, 20 times, 1/20th as fast or whatever as the original ones, as the full powered ones, in order to as a backup system. It makes perfect sense that they wrote it that way. But then again, when you stop to think about the Empire Strikes Back, makes no sense. Okay, so.
I mean, it's kind of like
from geography. It's not like you're going from New York to Miami to Texas. we're not. We're going, but in Star Wars, but in The Empire Strikes Back, that's the way they treat it. And the same problem
A
happens.
similar situation happens to Harrison Ford when he first gets on the Millennium Falcon
Mhm.
with George Lucas, and he says, "How do I drive this thing?" And George Lucas was like, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know
it's just
because
a, it's just a set. It's just a set.
because there is no yoke
Yeah,
in the original Star Wars
yeah.
set of the Millennium Falcon. There's no yoke. Every time I watch Solo and I see them both with the yoke, I'm like, that wasn't there.
Yeah.
Like there was no control surfaces.
Mhm.
There was no thing. So it was just Han pushing buttons.
Mhm.
So but regardless, it doesn't matter. What matters is that it sold us on a story that worked and we loved it and all of that stuff.
Mhm.
Solo is a lovely little time capsule of the type and kind of Star Wars film that you can make when you stop thinking about Star Wars as a story and start thinking of it as a setting. And the
Right.
minute you get there, you say, okay, well, we can tell caper flicks in Star Wars. And
Mhm.
when I saw Solo the first time, being an old Star Wars fan, the first thing I said, and I wrote it in my blog about when I did the review of it, I said, this just reminds me of the old Brian Daley books from 1978. Like
Mhm.
Brian Daley was a young writer who wrote 3 Han Solo books in
Yep.
1978 and 79. Han Solo at Star's End, Han Solo's Revenge, and Han Solo, and then interestingly enough, so did Al Neil Smith. The first book he ever wrote was a Landau Calrissian.
Yep. I've done all three. I've read.
Yeah,
I've read all 6 books.
and
They're
then,
great.
and I hated them because I thought he was a terrible writer at the time. But it
Oh,
doesn't
okay.
matter. He was wrong. I look at all the stuff like Kevin Anderson's original Star Wars books. Those are terrible.
Oh
He's
yeah, he's
clearly not a
terrible.
good. Yeah, he was terrible, and it put me off of all of his work for years. But
Mhm.
but like they
I
all
managed to
got
get
their.
through the Butlerian Jihad, but that's the only time I ever went back to his books that weren't Star Wars.
So what's really funny is like, look, it was very obvious that all those books were being published as a means by which to keep the brand alive, do the thing, and all of that. So there was a nice little homage in that respect to the Brian Daley books. It was also a really nice homage. I noticed that Alden Ehrenreich as Han Solo was more Dennis Quaid than Harrison Ford.
Right.
If you look at his performance, and Dennis Quaid was one of the 3 guys who was as a finalist for in the end for Han Solo, was Kurt Russell, Harrison Ford, and Dennis Quaid. And so
Think of
Alden
what those
Ehrenreich
movies
is
would have been like.
so Alden Ehrenreich as Han Solo. That's how good he is as an actor, and it's really
Mm.
sad that that Solo put him in a bad way in terms of his career. But he
Mhm.
did such a nice job of not necessarily doing Harrison Ford, but doing Han Solo as if Dennis Quaid had gotten the role, and you could see it, and you absolutely see it, especially the way he uses a smile. He's got that classic. He puts on that classic Dennis Quaid. It's almost like Dennis Quaid in Inner Space. Have you seen Inner Space, Joe
Oh
Dante's
yeah,
movie?
that's a long.
It's,
I haven't watched that
that's
movie
a
since the '90s.
that's a great fucking movie. I watched that movie. I love Joe Dante, so I love all those movies, like
Yeah,
Gremlins,
and of course
Gremlins
the
Two, all that.
soundtrack's done by oh,
Mm,
the guys who did the soundtrack for Live and Die in L.A.
mm. Right. It was I don't which I don't remember.
Yeah.
But watch Inner Space, Tuck Pendleton, and then watch Alden Ehrenreich, and you will see what I'm talking about in terms of how he structured his Han Solo. And there's a bunch of Dennis Quaid performances that where he uses that charm and that smile that way, and it's very, 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 very clear. And the script demands it. Actually, the script gives you that. So it's like we'll take the young Han Solo, we'll give him the Dennis Quaid swagger, and then when we meet him in Star Wars, he's morphed into the more jaded Harrison Ford, and it works really well. Um, Solo's a good movie.
Mhm.
It has a great cast. I'm actually the thing that pisses me off about the fan backlash against it, which was purely just revenge for their anger at the Last Jedi,
Yeah.
is that we didn't get more of Jonas's Chewbacca, and we have a new Chewbacca who can actually do stuff, right?
Right.
Who's into it? He's young. He's athletic. He's all of these things, and we can actually do Chewie. And then they just and then it all gets lost. And
Mhm.
watching any of the stuff about that movie, and go watch the Blu-ray or whatever, and watch all the little documentary vignettes and whatnot, you realize that Jonas just loves being Chewbacca. Like
Mhm.
he just loved it, and they all did, and they didn't. This wasn't a job to them. This was a thing, and
Yep.
I and I think all the Star Wars projects, no matter what their quality, no matter what your relationship to them is, everybody involved in it, I think, and I'm talking about the actors, I'm talking about, the bit players, the directors, the writers, everybody, it matters to them. They may have told a story you don't like. They may have told a story in a way you don't like, but it matters to them. Ryan Johnson loves Star Wars as much as I do. He loves it so much that he's willing to try and break Star Wars and its mythology in order to see if it still works. In my mind, I think he did that. Your mileage may vary. I like The Last Jedi. I consider it probably, in terms of the canon films or the saga films, it's easily the third best because of what it's trying to do, which is to tie all 9 movies together, to tie the entire story together, to actually finish the story that George Lucas started, which was that the Force created Anakin Skywalker to stop Palpatine and then bring balance to the Force. And then what do we do with the cleanup afterwards, which is the twins and the fact that Palpatine's getting cloned, and there's, now Han and Leia have a kid, and this is all a mess. And the Force is like, this is not good. This is not balance.
Right.
Right. And so to me, that was always the story. That was the story that my wife and I and my friend and my Star Wars geek friends understood the story to be in 1999 after watching The Phantom Menace for the first time. So I didn't understand why people were so upset about The Last Jedi, because I walked out of the theater going, "Oh, finally somebody else fucking gets it." Like, because for
I can tell
years
you
I'm
why
like, I
you were
never.
so upset about it.
I know why. I've heard every reason why. I still don't agree with it.
Okay. Well, for me,
Thematically,
it's just Heir to the Empire is so good, and this is nowhere near as good as what Timothy Zahn wrote.
right. But okay, but Zahn wrote some really fun adventure novels, but they weren't epic and they weren't mythic. Like, I'm sorry, I like those books when they first came out. They were good, and that's fine, and I enjoyed them. And I tried going back and rereading them like 10, 12 years ago on the toilet. Like, I'll pull it off the shelf, I'll reread it. And I got 100 pages in. I'm like, I don't care. Like, on the page, Luke, Han, and Leia are not great characters on the page. Never have been, never will be. I started getting other Star Wars. I didn't need that. Back in 1990, we were desperate for good Star Wars, especially after reading The Truce at Bakura and the Kevin Anderson books and all the other shit. And then Timothy Zahn came out.
Or the Crystal Star.
Yeah, all that shit. And then Timothy Zahn came out with a halfway decent fucking Star Wars book, and you're like, oh my God, it's the new Bible. I'm like, no, it's not. It's just a good story. And Thrawn's a great, and the best parts of that story are not Han, Luke, and Leia. The best parts of that story are Thrawn, Rook, the Salamiri, Mara Jade. Those are the characters that Zahn created are great. But Luke, Han, and Leia are not all that interesting, relatively speaking. So,
so both the clone Jedi,
Jorah Sabaoth and all of that stuff, like Sabaoth, that's all that stuff's good, right? And so, if you're an expanded universe fan, what I would say to you, and if you haven't tuned out by now, to just tell me that I'm an old fucking boomer who doesn't understand Star Wars, what I'll tell you is that Dave Filoni loved those stories and decided to bring Thrawn in Rebels and use him within the canon that they were creating. And that should be something you should take pride in. That's what I did when I saw that they were bringing in Thrawn. I'm like, ooh, that's a good get here, because they can't overuse Vader, right? They set up the first 2 seasons of Rebels, for example, as they were moving towards Vader, right? The Inquisitors ends with Vader, and the Twilight of the Apprentice with Ahsoka versus Vader. Ahsoka finds out what happened to Anakin. Ezra gets away. We reintroduce Maul, and then it's Maul plus Thrawn over the soul of Ezra, right?
Yep.
And it's a great story.
It is a great story.
It is a great story.
After Solo, that would be my Rebels is my second favorite part of the new Star Wars.
Right, and there's a good reason for that. Interestingly enough, I was, at some point after the sequel films were finished, Dexter White, every once in a while, when he doesn't have anything to watch, he pings me and he says, "Hey man, what should I watch next? What weird science fiction thing that you've watched should I watch next?" I'm like, okay. I guess he trusts my judgment on this stuff, and I'm about an 85% hit rate with him. I give him all the best stuff.
Mm.
And so he watched the Clone Wars, and it started out slow, and then and that was why, like, one day he was on struggling through season 2, and then next time I talked to him, like 4 days later, he's in season 5. Like, the
Okay.
Clone Wars takes it off at season 3 and then doesn't stop, right? And the same thing kind of happened with Rebels. He's like, Rebels is kind of okay, and it's starting as a little light, and then before I knew it, he was like, dude, that was the most Star Wars since Star Wars. Like, the story of Rebels and the way it operates at every level, including how it treats the Force, including how it treats all the characters and everything else, um, is essentially all the things that Lucas talked about in those first couple of movies, Star Wars and Empire,
Mhm.
where, he ties it all together, having put Yoda on, Dagobah with all of this life around him and all of this stuff, and so then you get the Bendu and all these great characters and how Kanan and how all that interacts, and it's like he was right. I'm like, and then, I'm not giving anything away here. And then Kanan goes out like a boss, better than just about any character in Star Wars canon. You can thank Freddie Prinze Jr., the voice actor, for that.
Mm.
And because Dave Filoni was going to chimp out in the end and not kill him.
Ah, okay.
And Freddie Prinze is like, oh no, you're going to kill Kanan. You
Yeah,
have to kill him. Otherwise, this story does not make any sense.
right.
And so that when we pick up, so then if you don't understand Rebels, and then you don't understand why Ahsoka and why The Mandalorian and why the sequel films all tie in together. Because one of the things that's really important is to understand in all of this is that Rebels rightly sets up that all the men have been removed. Ezra winds up with Thrawn out in the middle, in the ass into space in another galaxy. Kanan's killed. There are no men left. Cassian Andor's killed at the end of Rogue One, and
Yeah.
the world is left to women.
Hmm.
Right? Okay, so women are in charge of the New Republic. Mon
That's
Mothma,
true.
Leia, Hera, everybody else. So if you look at the setup in Ahsoka season 1, this is a story about, like, I had a friend of mine sort of turn to me and go, Ahsoka, this is boring women in space. I'm like, no, these are the women who were left behind, and they don't know how to deal with the fact that the men are gone and they can't lead. So these women are having to be put in roles that they don't want to be placed in.
Okay.
It's the same theme that dominates the sequel films.
Hmm.
Rey is an abandoned
Oh yeah.
female, and look, I'm gonna get I'm gonna get I'm gonna get Jung 101 on you here. Okay,
Okay.
this is not deep Carl Jung shit. This shouldn't be too friggin' hard. Rey is an abandoned, animus possessed woman who has to become hyper competent at everything in order to survive. She shut off all of her sexuality. She shut off all of her individuality. And everything bad has happened to this girl, and
Oh
yet
yeah.
still she
Absolutely.
yet still she has this core of fundamental decency. And when she gets her call to action, which is BB-8, she runs towards the danger, not away from it. Right. So a she's already shown to be a heroic character in conflict with Finn, who, when Finn is in opening sequences, I just thought about this at the beginning of Force Awakens. Finn, when he's put under pressure for the first time, he runs.
Oh yeah.
So does Poe. He runs. Right now, granted, he's running rightly from this monster, Kylo Ren, but he runs away from danger. His call to action is to run away from evil, right? But not towards something good. Rey just jumps into the unknown,
Mhm.
right? So these are elemental bits of these stories. Whether you like it or not, this is the way the filmmakers are thinking. This is the way the screenwriters are thinking. This is the images they're putting on the screen. And this is why Ray is the main character. And so, but we realize that she has been placed in the situation she doesn't know what to do with,
Mhm.
right? So as a character, she's lost, right? And so everybody focusing on things like, oh, she knows how to pick up a lightsaber and use it the first time she sees it. This is all fucking spurgy bullshit. Like, this
Yeah.
is literal spurgy bullshit, when the reality is that the Force, as an active agent, has concentrated all of the Force into these two characters, Ray and Kylo Ren,
Yeah.
and they're gonna and they've been set in opposition to one another. My biggest problem with the Force Awakens is that knowing full well that the shooting script and the final movie are radically different, by the way,
Hmm.
because they didn't know what movie they were actually trying to tell, because they didn't have a settled script. They had most of the settled script. And
Yeah, I want to make a few comments on that before we go on. So first off, my
but okay,
regular
well, let
co-host, the
me
Warhound, is in the chat right now and is very
right.
angry that I get to have Tom all to myself. and
Hey man, how are you?
the other thing is that people don't. A lot of people get so. Why don't they have a plan? And I'm like, you guys got to understand, in the grand scope of things, only two people in the United States have ever done what we think of as a plan out science fiction in this kind of way
Right.
before. One of them is JMS
Yep.
of Babylon 5, and the other is Rick Berman of Star Trek.
Hmm.
And no one. And also,
And,
I guess the third one would be the guy from who was running the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I can't remember his name right now.
and even then, and remember, Battlestar Galactica, they didn't have a plan past season
Oh
2.
yeah, they were writing up as they went along.
No, clearly, I mean, Ron Moore was like, I know thematically what I want to talk about, which is,
Yeah.
and it's clear on rewatch of BSG that it's very obvious what he wants to talk about. It was
Yeah.
hard to process at the time, especially, with the breaks, the production breaks, and the writer strike, and everything, and the tonal shifts and everything else.
And
Very, very
sometimes the
difficult.
actors would leave or never come back, and you're like,
Right.
Are we ever going to see that particular Cylon ever again?
Mhm. But understand, so the setup in the Force Awakens is that, and there's a couple of things. One, um there's J.J. Abrams has even admitted this. He's like, look, I missed certain things in the rush of the production. I missed, Leia hugging Chewie and consoling Chewie after they come back and Han gets killed. Like, it's a mistake, and he's like admitted. He's like, yeah, no, I fucked up.
Yeah.
I'm really sorry. I'm really sorry. But there's other things about Ray's setup that I know that he would want to go back and redo in order to give everybody a couple of couple of little hints. That's all you would have needed. That's one. And then two, what was the subplot that's left on the cutting room floor that's in the novelization of the screenplay, which I've read, is that Kylo Ren is searching for her. He knows she exists. It's kind of in the movie. When you know that plot's there, you can see the DNA of it in the final cut of the movie. But he's searching for her. There's that moment where he goes, and there was a girl. What girl? And like, why is his reaction so freaking over there? It's because he actually knows she exists and understands that she's so the whole dyad in the Force thing that you think they retconned into Rise of Skywalker. No, it's been there the entire time. Like, that is actually an important thing. And then when we get to the end of the movie, and she actually picks up the lightsaber for the first time, she doesn't know what to do with it. That's very, very clear. She's going to get her ass handed to her. The only thing that's stopping, that's helping, that's giving her any help whatsoever, is the fact that Kylo Ren just committed patricide. He's a mess. He just got shot in the gut by a Wookiee bowcaster and got dinged by Finn, another guy who's like, okay, so who's this fucking guy that he can actually hit Kylo Ren? That was all done mechanically to set up. From a screenwriter's perspective, you have to set up the idea that Rey could even hang with him for 4 seconds without getting gutted, right?
Right.
And then she taps the dark side of the Force.
Mm-hmm.
She doesn't tap the light side of the Force.
Yeah.
She taps the dark side of the Force. When you watch the Force Awakens very carefully, you will realize when she beats him, she's standing over him with the exact look on her face and the exact friggin'. I screenshotted it one day of Luke standing over Darth Vader at the end of Return of the Jedi.
Yeah.
And her standing over Kylo Ren. It's exactly the same set. It's exactly the same shot, exactly the same expression on their face. Like, it's clear as freaking day that's the callback that they were making. She tapped the dark side to do that. And the only thing that stops her from killing him is the Force intervenes, splits the planet apart, and sends them on their way. Because the Force is an active agent in all of this. It was not time yet to have them. They can't kill each other. And she can't kill him, because if she does, the Force is now out of balance, and then the Force has to do this work all over again. So
Right.
now you have to split them apart, set them on their path to come back to be reconciled so that they can fight whoever the big bad is. At that time, it was Snoke, but it always made sense that it would be Palpatine if you went with the idea that the big story was that the Force created Anakin Skywalker to kill Palpatine, and then the sequel films would be we have to clean up the Skywalker mess because the
Yeah.
Skywalkers are actually just they're a mess that were created by the Force for a particular purpose. Anakin bred, which he probably shouldn't have done, and then we have to clean up the rest of this and afterwards and in the process what Disney did was and what not what Disney did what Larry Kasdan and JJ Abrams did was tell a story about gender roles when they're out of whack
Hmm.
during a culture war crisis. And I've been made this argument for years, and it's very, very obvious. You have a classic inversion. This is going to like Jonathan Pajot and all the inversion stuff that happens at the ends of cycles of history and all of this stuff. This is very normal, and it's the end state of feminism and the toxicity of feminism, and it's the end state of of what happens when men are made weak by a society out of balance. Men are weak. The women have to fill in. You have Laura Dern, and then you wind up with Laura Dern in the Last Jedi. You wind up with Leia as a failed mom. You wind up with Rey as this animus possessed woman who doesn't know how to be a woman,
Right.
and in the wrong roles. And then you have the men who are all three. And I've said this many times. Go look at the Last Jedi, and Ryan Johnson makes his point abundantly fucking clear that the jock isn't a full man, that
Yep.
the runaway boy isn't a full man, and the anima possessed mommy issues boy with no who's never been given any boundaries is also a real problem.
Right.
Psychologically, those movies make perfect sense. Those are the three guys that Ray has to choose from. They all suck.
Yeah.
And that's what the Last Jedi is so in the Last Jedi thematically is about how Finn levels up, Poe levels up, but Kylo Ren fails,
Right.
and Rey shuts the door on him until, and then she has to in the Rise of Skywalker they still have to resolve that tension, because then she finds out that well her dark side is that she's Palpatine's granddaughter,
You're right.
which makes her a the daughter of at the very least Palpatine's actual granddaughter or some fucking clone of Palpatine's whatever. It's disgusting. And like you start to think about this and you're like and how is she supposed to figure out who the hell she is, right?
Yep.
And her 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 fatal flaw is her hubris in that you gave her the classic Beauty and the Beast arc, which I mean,
Yep.
women only have like two classic arcs. They have Mary and they have Beauty and the Beast. And they gave her the Beauty and the Beast arc and it failed
Mhm.
completely. And
Right.
then they had to graft the Jesus arc onto Luke Skywalker in order to try and redeem Kylo Ren. And Kylo Ren said no. Now we have a third movie.
Yep.
Like that's the story, and you can argue about the mechanics of it. You can argue about whether the Last Jedi is properly plotted or paced or this. I don't give a shit. That's up to you. If you don't like the movie, fine. But that's what the movie's talking about, and that's what
Mm.
Rise of Skywalker was talking about, and that's why Colin Trevorrow's Episode 9 script was jettisoned by
Yeah.
Kathleen Kennedy because it wasn't setting up. It was like we want to retcon everything and make Finn the main character in the
Right.
Stormtrooper Rebellion on Coruscant, which would have been a cool movie. Don't get me wrong; I would have been cool, but that
Yeah.
wasn't the story they had set up.
Right.
So, you know,
Have you ever watched Blade Seven?
leave it to a limey to try and fuck up American mythology. Fuck these
Correct.
guys. So
Anyways, have you ever watched Blade Seven?
I have not.
Yeah. So there's one episode in the third or fourth season which is about all of this. What you were just talking about.
Right.
Basically, the crew shows up on this planet. Some people get wounded and captured, and it turns out they had a literal war between the sexes.
Right.
And
Mhm.
in the end, the men win. because
Yeah, and so no, you're exactly right. And then the problem I always said that the problem with the Last Jedi as a movie is that it came out in 2017 at
mhm,
the height of the gender wars and the culture war that was
yeah,
happening, and so everybody saw it as I argued with so many I'll be honest with you, like friends of mine, like my gaming friends locally and whatnot. They were all these like anywhere from 40 to 65-year-old childless man babies who were all like, that movie's a misandrist, right? And I'm
mhm,
like, what are you fucking talking about? That movie doesn't love women. It's just saying that the men are just falling down. The women
yeah,
are all shit too.
oh yeah,
Like, you know, but they're, as my wife is saying, screaming over in the corner, they're doing the best they can, and
yep,
she's right. Like, it's not good, but that's what chaos. That's what we're talking about. We've got a first order that has the ability to to suck down suns and destroy planets at range. Look, it's ludicrous. It's stupid. It's ridiculous. It's Star Wars. Star Wars is
yeah,
not
yeah,
meant to be taken. It's not meant to be taken literally. It's creation myth.
yeah,
It's not. It's and this I and what bothers me is how badly the commentariat has tried, and the fandom has tried to force logic onto Star Wars when there is no logic in Star Wars. And I
right.
again pointed
This is
out
high
a big.
fantasy in space.
Well, again, it's creation myth. The inconsistencies make it interesting. Like
Mhm,
every creation myth. Like it was funny. We went to see Jordan Peterson back in 2018 in
oh,
Jacksonville. Um, he was talking about the ludicrousness of the Egyptian creation myth, right? And he just kind of went through the mechanics of Osiris and Set, and then picking up and then impregnating the wife with Isis with the crystallized dick of the old the dismembered penis of the old in order to create the sun. Like, and it's just retardedly over the top insane story,
right.
but that insanity is what made it stick, because Peterson's point was that look at it was the insanity of it that got the theme of the story across, and it sustained Egyptian society for thousands of years. And literally, while he was going through that, it was January 2018 or February 2018. It was very early, right after the Last Jedi came out, and all the hoopla was, and everybody was pissing and moaning. And I just leaned over to my wife and went, just like Star Wars and the Last Jedi. And she's like, God damn, you're right. I'm like, it was like right there in front of us. And I'm like
Mhm,
watching it happen. I'm like, Star Wars has always had inconsistencies in it. It's always had things that don't make any sense, because it's like that line from Raiders of the Lost Ark. The two best lines in Raiders of the Lost Ark. One is, "It's not the years, honey, it's the mileage."
right.
The second great line is, "I don't know, I'm making this up as I go."
Yeah,
Like,
I got to say, as a
what's
personally,
that?
as a writer, oh,
Right. That's the my wife is off camera reminding me about the whole McGilchrist right brain, left brain divide, which is that
mhm,
we're all, and you got people out there on Twitter and on YouTube analyzing Star Wars from a left brain perspective, a logic perspective, when the inconsistencies are meant to get you past that and into what it means, not what it's saying, but what it means. Movies are best when they do both things right. Okay,
mhm,
without a doubt, there's no argument there. So if you don't like The Last Jedi, nothing I'm going to tell you is going to make you like The Last Jedi.
mhm,
I'm okay with that. I gave that up ages ago.
yeah,
But what's important is to understand that there's an intention behind all of this. That in some ways, the stupid slow chase in The Last Jedi is supposed to piss you off at a certain level.
mhm,
Can we stretch your ability to believe this story this way in order to get the bigger picture, the bigger theme through? And I've intended for a long time. I've said for a long time is that the biggest problem with young influencers on Star Wars and The Last Jedi is that it's all a bunch of millennial men pissing and moaning that the movie was complaining that they suck.
yeah. That's certainly
So that's what the
the
movie's about. The
yeah,
movie's about three dudes that don't get it done, that aren't getting it done. And now a bunch of these old farty women are terrible at this shit. And look, Leia and Holdo would be irredeemable as characters if after Poe's little rebellion, they didn't look at him and go, I kind of like him. Yeah, so do I. And then they bring him on the ship, and they realize that he's well intentioned, and that they as leaders understand that he has to become that guy. And however they do it, however they get him there, is how they get him there. They don't have any. They're not being smug. They're not being mean. They're saying he's a boy in the process of growing up, and we have to be. And as mothers, we have to be um, indulgent of their mistakes so
Right.
they can learn, so that they can become men. That's the point. And go. I've watched enough Ryan Johnson. I love Ryan Johnson. I think he's a great
Hmm.
filmmaker. May the Last
Looper's a
Jedi may
great
not.
movie.
Looper's a great movie. Brick is an amazing movie. Knives Out is a great movie. The brother, even the Brothers Bloom, which is a great caper flick, by the way, if
Okay,
you've
I'll
not
have to
seen
check
it,
that one out.
with Adrian Brody and Rachel Weisz, and I think it's Mark Ruffalo, who I hate, but he's actually tolerable in that movie.
Yeah,
Um,
some actors, I disagree with their politics, but
mm,
I don't give a shit. Like Sterling
mm,
Hayden was a communist. I love
yeah,
his
yeah,
movies. You
yeah. Like he's,
know?
but so when you think through this stuff, like Johnson is a great filmmaker, and he's absolutely a structuralist from the Bob McKee. If you've not read Bob McKee's story, you should.
Okay.
um, and if you want to understand how Ryan Johnson builds scripts,
Mm,
read Bob McKee, because he's like, I'm one of McKee's biggest disciples. He
mm,
openly talks about this.
mm,
And reading a screenplay or watching his screenplays, I'm like, yep, I understood. He knew exactly what he was going to write about the minute he got the job.
mm.
Like, he thought there was no other story for him to write after he read The Force Awakens. He went home that afternoon, he got the job, he signed the contract, and he wrote The Last Jedi.
Mm.
He wrote the title down and then worked backwards. He knew exactly what he wanted to say. Like,
Okay.
Ryan Johnson was not confused at all what movie he was making.
Yeah, he's a
And
plotter, as they say in writing. There are two types of
mhm,
writers: pantsers and plotters. George Lucas is a pantser. I'm a pantser. Uh, he's a plotter. I get it.
he plots, but he understands that, and he understands how to build. Again, everything about The Last Jedi is designed around Rey as the central character, and her flaw, and her descent into the underworld, her sexual awakening, all of the stuff. It's all about that and how she fails,
Mm,
and she survives, but she fails.
yeah.
It's exactly the opposite of what I said about the Phantom Menace,
Mhm,
which is that Lucas, and I've always said this about George Lucas, he's made multiple movies. He made 3 movies, really.
mhm,
He made 4. Let's ignore Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith for a second. Let's talk about 4 films that he made with the exact same process: THX 1138, American
yeah.
Graffiti, Star Wars, and The Phantom Menace.
Mhm,
Those 4 movies were all found in the edit. He did not have a screenplay worth a
yeah.
shit. What he had was a bad process and faith in himself as a storyteller and as an assembler of film,
Mhm,
right? To tell the story he wanted to tell. And he's really an art house film director. He has that mindset. And, you know, and what he's also done, I think, is he's always tapped into the zeitgeist in a way that was durable and interesting, and with a very specific plan in mind. And but that process failed him when he got to the Phantom Menace. He
mhm.
thought he could do it again with the Phantom Menace, and he couldn't do it.
His other problem
And
is he didn't have Gary Kurtz.
yeah, well, that and he threw, and Gary Kurtz walked off of Return of the Jedi,
Right.
because Return of the Jedi was not a Star Wars movie. It was a, how do I build Lucasfilm into an Empire movie?
Right.
It was all about selling toys. It was all about selling books and merchandise and everything else, because Lucas had big plans to take on the studio system, which he succeeded at. And he sacrificed the quality of the script of Return of the Jedi in order to get that done.
Right.
And that is a hard lesson for guys our age to accept. It's really hard for the millennials who grew up on the original trilogy plus the expanded universe to accept,
Yep.
but it's reality. And it's the truth, and all you have to do is look at, to your point, who's the producer on Return of the Jedi. It is not Gary Kurtz, it's Howard Kazanjian, and Kazanjian was a yes man,
Yep.
and it showed. And
Yep.
the fact that Steven Spielberg would not lead the Directors Guild to direct the movie, left Lucas with a subpar director. Then he had to match cut, and Lucas directed 2/3 of Return of the Jedi. You do
Correct.
realize
Pretty
that, right?
much.
Right. Then he had to match the garbage that Richard Marquand had produced in terms of tone and camera setups and angles and everything. He didn't like that's not. It doesn't look like a George Lucas directed movie, does it? You know why? Because George Lucas is such a skilled filmmaker. He can ape somebody else's. He can ape an English TV director's style and match it perfectly, tonally, to what was already done. Marquand was fired. Go watch all the old file footage. He
Mhm.
only shows up on Jabba's palace. He's not. I mean, he's kind of there in with the Ewoks and whatnot, but he's just not there. Lucas is
Mhm.
directing most of the movie. So and George, to his credit, um, never threw Richard under the bus in the same way that JMS never threw Michael O'Hare under the bus for his
Yeah.
psychological breakdown during season one of B5. These men have showed great, these are great men in that respect because they've showed great loyalty to the people that they've hired over the years and had to work around. And you should respect them for that. And you should respect Lucas for not throwing Richard Marquand under the bus in order to get Return of the Jedi done. It doesn't take away from the fact that as a piece of film work, Return of the Jedi is subpar.
Yeah.
Like, it is. But it's redeemed by an amazing third act.
Yeah. Definitely.
Mhm.
Yeah. No. Just thinking about some of the stuff you're just saying about that,
Mm.
and
Bring us to Solo. Let's go back to the original reason why we
perfect.
discussed this. We put this together, which is Solo. Solo is a movie that was tonally a mess because Kathleen Kennedy saved Solo. Kathleen
She did.
Kennedy saved Rogue One
Mm.
because she saw the rough cut from Gareth Edwards, and she realized that was not the right story, and she had to bring Tony Gilroy in to take the story, restructure it, give it a structure, make it around Jyn Erso and her dad. That movie is laid. The act structure in that movie is purely about Jyn's relationship with her dad.
Mhm.
Okay, at every level. And watching it, Gilroy reshot the movie and recut it, and that comes from Kathleen Kennedy. And
Well, you
if
know
you love,
who is the one responsible for why everyone dies in the end, though, right?
it's
Yeah.
I assume it's just from the beginning they all said, "Are we going to
No,
kill
they
everybody
were
else?"
originally going to have. There's shots that we don't see anymore that
Mhm.
were in the original trailer because they were supposed to live, and this was going to be the start of a franchise.
So
But
I see.
so
I've heard both.
the actors went to Kathleen Kennedy and said, "We should all be killed at the end of this movie."
That's interesting because I've heard both stories. Right. I've
Mhm.
heard. I mean, I always said to me, like, well, you hire Felicity Jones, you hire Diego Luna, like, and I love Felicity Jones as Jyn Erso, and
Mhm.
I love her so much in Rogue One that I'm like, I would love to see her again.
Mhm.
I would love to see Jyn Erso in other contexts, but it's her story, and she doesn't need any more of that, right?
Yeah, she
She's
was the lead on getting
Yeah,
her
she's
character
the
killed off.
yeah, yeah. And but I've also heard that from the beginning, like John Knoll talked about it from the beginning. He said, are we going to kill? Are we going to have the balls to kill everybody off? And they went to the Disney board and asked
Yeah.
if they could do that, and the Disney board said yes. Now,
Mhm.
whether or not when they originally got to the end of the screenplay, whether that they were going to all live or not, then it was probably a negotiation on the set, as you point out. But originally, their plan was to kill everybody off.
Mhm.
Now, whether they altered that plan during production in the same way that, again, Dave Filoni was always intending on killing Arcane and Jarrus at the end of Rebels, and then he started to get cold feet at the beginning of season 4, and Freddie Prinze Jr. had to hold his feet to the
Yeah.
fire and say, no, Kanan needs to die.
Mhm.
You can't not kill him. He has to die. Otherwise, Ezra can't grow up. Otherwise, this can't happen. Otherwise, the story's not right. Otherwise, balance isn't restored. Blah, 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 blah. And Freddie
Mhm.
Prinze Jr. being a better Star Wars fan than the both of us combined,
Mhm.
was completely correct.
Yep.
And for that reason we have Rebels, and for that reason we have Rogue One, and we should cherish those films, and those stories, and we should forgive Disney or Lucasfilm for when they've made mistakes, because I remember watching the Ewok Adventures when I was a kid. They were
Same here.
awful.
Yeah, they were.
They were bad, and I didn't hold it
Droids was
against Star
okay.
Wars. Yeah, Droids was. I didn't. I think I maybe watched an episode or two. I didn't. I don't remember it.
Droids did the great thing about Droids was it had a little bit of serialized storytelling.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Mm.
But I mean, but then we get into but then think about where I know like people think that Star Wars is in a bad way today, and it's all just narrative. It's no
Yeah,
different than the shit that we're talking about in whether Trump's going to lose the midterms or any of this other crap. It's the same shit. It's the same people, by the way.
yeah,
Um, I'll go to my grave saying that Grace Randolph works for the bad guys. Like I don't have a problem with this. Like the whole Star Wars YouTube culture thing. Like I get
hmm
it. Like those guys, they're all paid. Grace Randolph is just Rich Barris,
mm.
right? In politics, the other guy, John, not Cena, whatever his fucking name is.
Campia.
Yeah, John Campia. He's just Robert Barnes.
Yeah,
He's just Robert Barnes. It's no different, right?
mm.
So John Campy he's full of shit. I go to my grave saying that guy, is either on the take or has been used the algorithm to get what he wanted, and then just kept giving everybody what they wanted to hear.
Yeah.
And then you
I
have
agree
like
with
guys
that.
like, and
He's
then
from
you
my
have guys like
hometown.
Mike, guys like Mike Zero and others like all these other
Oh wow,
fucking
Mike
horse
Zero.
shit.
I haven't heard that guy's name in a while.
Remember that?
He just
Oh
made
yeah.
us thing stuff.
Yeah, he
Stuff.
made shit up. This guy WDW
Oh, okay.
Pro. That guy, he's full of shit too. He's
Mhm.
full of shit. Like he's been saying for 6 years that they're going to decanonize the friggin' sequel films. I'm like, then why do they keep making 200 and 300 million dollar projects where they keep adding additively towards moving us towards the sequel films? It makes no sense whatsoever.
Yeah,
They've been using the whole world between world thing since in Rebels to say they're going to just fork the timeline and go into the future. I'm like, no, they're not going to do that.
yeah. No, the
No,
only
they're
thing
not.
that would I could see them possibly doing is trying to reboot the series with a whole new cast and a whole new thing
Hmm.
sometime in the future. But that's
I
just
hope
a
they.
business decision. I don't look at it as some sort of cultural thing.
I don't think they should do that. I'll be honest
I,
with you. I think
I
I
don't think
think
they
that
should either. I just think they
yeah. I
I get
mean,
corporate shit bags.
I like the idea that, and I don't believe this either. By the way, all the rumors about Starfighter with Ryan Gosling that it's going to be a setup for the Ray new Jedi
Hmm.
Order, episodes 10 through 12 things. If it is, it is. I don't really care. I
Yeah.
think it's going to be, I think they're just going, we need to make a Top Gun in space. Like, we need to make Star Wars Top Gun. I'm like, yes.
Yes.
Just like we needed to make Star Wars, the Caper movie with Solo.
Mhm.
By the way, and just like we had needed to make the Western with the Mandalorian and and all this stuff, we needed to do these.
Yeah.
These elements are all there. It's like watching Visions on Disney Plus and watching all these great animation studios tell these great Star Wars stories in Japanese. Like
Mhm.
they're cool. I mean, I have to be in the right mood for them. Like
Mhm.
not, if I put them on at like 1 o'clock in the morning and I invariably fall asleep because that's what happens. But if I try watching them like in the middle of the day I got a good day, like they hit really well. And they're just amazing pieces of animation. And what you love is to see the Japanese, a non-American, because Star Wars is an American thing. It's not really a global thing. It's
Mhm.
very much an American mythology. So to
Yeah.
watch another culture as radically as different as the Japanese, but knowing that Star Wars has got very Japanese roots in it, to watch them embrace Star Wars and then do very very cool non-canon like shit within that world or that milieu is really cool. And it tells you this is where I look at people like Kathleen. I look at all the people pissing and moaning about Kathleen Kennedy. Have you noticed, by the way, that the minute Kathleen Kennedy stepped down, now the knives are out for Dave Filoni?
Oh yeah.
It's the same. It's the same bullshit. It's the
Yep.
same thing. I'm telling you, this is all City of London.
Okay.
It is. It's all just we need to destroy anything good
Oh
for
yeah. Yeah.
Gen.
It's definitely. I
We have
agree
to
with
we
that.
have to destroy all things that give Gen X aid and comfort
Yep. No, they had to
because
take over.
Gen X is coming into their power. We're taking over the political system in the United
It's
States. We're
already
taking
taken over
over.
here.
Yeah, we're taking over the captains of industry here in the
Mhm.
United States. It's all changing. The boomers are being moved out, and
Mhm.
now the Gen X is coming in. And I've been on this thing for since the beginning. Like
Mhm.
literally, the backlash against the Last Jedi. some of it was organic. I'm not going to argue. There's a lot of
Yeah,
people
yeah.
who just don't like the movie. That's fine. But it's been stoked to a fever pitch to destroy everything about Star Wars since then. And I refuse to let that happen. I refuse to let anybody harsh my joy.
Yep.
If you haven't seen The Mandalorian and Grogu, you should. It's fun as shit. I can't wait to
Okay.
go again. I can't wait to go again.
Maybe let's go see it on Tuesday.
I
I just
I
saw
I wanted to go see it
Project
on.
Hail Mary for $15. I was not happy.
I didn't see. I haven't seen that yet.
It's
But
good. It's just
I really only go to the movies to go watch Star Wars or
Dune.
that's it. Dune. I saw Dune. The last Snyder verse flick I
Yeah,
saw in the theaters. Like there's a couple of things you see in the theaters. Everything else I can miss. I don't need to go see the stuff in the
yeah.
theaters.
No, same here. No, though I'm like
But
I love
I'm
the
looking forward to.
Snyderverse
Oh,
version of Star Wars, but I get why, or sorry, of the DC universe, but I
mhm.
get why it's not generally accepted because I'm a very narrow taste. I'm like,
Mm.
I felt like,
I think
and
it. I think the Snyderverse is actually. I think that was another one of those things that was killed. Like
yeah,
I followed that story very closely,
mhm,
and because I'm a huge DC fan,
mhm,
and I watched the Warner when Zaslav came in after the Warner's Discovery merger. It was very clear where they were headed. They were headed to bring Henry Cavill back, to bring to finishing the story and everything else, and then all of a sudden, James Gunn was brought in. All
yeah,
of a sudden, there was a fight within the board, and I'm telling you, that's got freaking George Soros or somebody like that written all over it. That this was designed, and then they handed it off to that fucking dirtbag James Gunn, and he has done nothing but destroy DC since
mhm,
then. If you have, and the last bits of what was effectively Snyderverse content. That would be like Black Adam and
which
the
I
first
really
op,
enjoyed.
which was very good,
Mhm.
which was really good. Because we got to see Doctor Fate. Like, are you
Yeah,
fucking kidding me? I can't. It's like I was when I saw that Doctor Fate was going to be in that movie. Like I'll be there for a show. Like I'm a huge Doctor Fate fan.
mm,
So um, when I saw all that happening, I'm like, and then they body swerved away from it. I'm like, this is an operation, folks. This is part of the culture war. They have
yeah,
to destroy. They have to destroy this because the Snyder Cut had done something they were not happy with, which was that, again, this is a movie, by the way, written by who? The same guy who was brought in to save the Rise of Skywalker, Chris
mm,
Terrio, right? So he wrote BVS. He wrote Batman v Superman, the ultimate cut of which is phenomenal.
yeah.
The
I
Snyder
love
Cut,
that movie too. And
the
the
Snyder,
ultimate cut. When I watched it, I was like, oh
the,
my god, this is great.
this is
I
phenomenal,
knew
right?
I loved Ben Affleck as Batman in the opening moments of that movie when everyone is running for their lives, and where the hell
Yes,
is
he's running
Batman
right into.
going? Bruce
He's
Wayne is
running
running towards the fight.
into the unknown, right?
Yeah,
He runs into smoke. He runs into 9/11,
yeah,
right? And yeah, no, I agree completely. He was,
mm,
the scene that did it for me in BVS. I saw it in the theaters 2 or 3 times, and
mm,
the theatrical cut, I understood it well enough to know what they were trying to do. So I was able to get
mm.
through the. It was, by the way, that cut was designed from the ground up to destroy the movie.
Right.
That was a piece of editorial vandalism. Okay. So but the scene that sold it for me is the scene in the tomb when
Mm,
he looks at Alfred and he goes, I'm older now than my father ever was.
yeah.
And that just, it still tears my heart out every time I think about it. It's such a good line.
Mm,
It's such a brilliant moment. And so between that movie, um, Justice League part, Justice the Snyder cut of Justice League was written by Terrio, and then so they obviously they knew exactly who to bring in, right?
mm,
They brought in the good geek Italian Catholic boy who gave Batman his faith back.
yeah.
Okay, like yeah, that's who you bring in. If you think that these people hate Star Wars at Lucasfilm, you aren't you're just not watching what they're doing. They make mistakes. We can talk about the mistakes if you want to for a little bit. We can talk about those mistakes. The Acolyte was a mistake, not because of what the Acolyte was trying to do, but because of its execution. We can talk about Obi-Wan was a mistake. Should have been a 2-hour movie, not a 6-episode miniseries.
A lot of these
Right?
things are just a 2-hour movie that got stretched out.
Right. They made mistakes. They also, I also will remind everybody that Lucasfilm, which is not Disney, by the way, it's still its own autonomous thing.
Yep.
Lucasfilm had been geared up for one project, one big project every 2 or 3 years.
Yep.
That's the way Lucasfilm operated. It had all these little had all these little subsidiaries, Lucas Arts and Lucas Animation and Lucas Books and this and everything.
Industrial Light
But
and Magic, which is
and
defined the
ILM,
90s.
yeah, ILM, Skywalker Sound. Those are all individual companies with their own thing, and they can be working on multiple projects. But Lucasfilm, as a production house and a generator of an incubator of film content, one project at best every 2 to 3 years, and all of a sudden Disney asked them to start putting out 3 and 4 and 5 a year.
Yeah.
This is, you realize that you run into a very simple thing. There ain't that many fucking talented people in Hollywood to get all this shit done. Why do you think Deborah Chow, who's at best a third-rate pool director, was given fucking Obi-Wan? Because there was nobody else.
Right.
Because Jon Favreau was working on The Mandalorian, for fuck's sake. And they couldn't afford at that point to bring in a top-flight film director. Everybody else is busy. At the end of the day, they had an opportunity. Ewan McGregor had a hole in his schedule, and they had this chick who had done some passable work on The Mandalorian under Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni's, supervision.
Yep.
Give it to her. Give it to the third string. Give it to the chick squad, and see, and hope for the best. And that's what happened. And that doesn't make it good. It doesn't make it under. It doesn't. You don't have to like it. I hate it.
Yeah.
I really don't like Obi-Wan. I tried watching it the second time, and I'm like, after those opening sequences in that first episode where we see him, scratching out a living on Tatooine, the rest of it, and then maybe the ending, like the 4 episodes in the middle are just, I just fast forward through. Oh God, this is terrible. It's not good. I wish it was good. And Obi-Wan, and I say this, and Obi-Wan is my favorite character in all of Star Wars.
Oh, okay.
Obi-Wan's the only real Jedi in all of Star Wars.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
Okay. Obi-Wan is the one who sacrifices his entire life for the Jedi code, not the Jedi Order. Right? And so, for me, you want my biggest gripe about the prequels, other than, some of the editing and some of the maybe the story beat choice, is the fact that Rey wasn't Obi-Wan's granddaughter. And the reason,
think that was what they were originally going to go for.
No, they clearly had 2 paths. They've talked about this. They had I've seen the whiteboard, of the flow chart of the story of how it could go. They had a whole flow chart of which way the guys were going to take it. And JJ took it to here, and then Ryan Johnson said we're going here, and then in the end, I wish they had decided on who she was at the beginning. I think that thematically, Obi-Wan being outside of the whole Skywalker versus Palpatine thing that the Force had created, that her thematically being Obi-Wan's daughter or granddaughter, it would be granddaughter, obviously, of Duchess Satine from Mandalore, from the Clone Wars, that would be the neutral third party who balanced the 2 antipodes, right? Palpatine on the one side, Skywalker's on the other. Obi-Wan always caught in the middle. So his granddaughter is the one that helps bring balance to the Force. Mm-hmm. And it wouldn't have been the same story. It wouldn't have been her and Kylo Ren, in effect, or Ben Solo reconciling, effectively getting married, and then dying at the end of Rise of Skywalker, which was a fine ending, by the way.
Right.
Especially if you're a girl. My daughter loves the end of those stories, by the way, whereas the boys are all like, and my daughter was like, There's a
lot of shipping going on around here.
Right. And so, making Star Wars making a Star Wars ending for a bunch of 16-year-old girls is really not a bad thing, folks. If it's not. It's sorry. I know the
And
boys can't
girls
put it
buy
on
more
her.
things than boys. That's how it
No, it's
works.
not. It's not even just that. I mean, that's fair, but just from a thematic standpoint, this is
Mm.
clearly these people aren't thinking like that. This is all this artistic shit that's going on. It's very clear that Kathleen Kennedy is allowing the artists to have their head, but try and keep them on the Star Wars, within Star Wars guardrails and whatnot. That's why
Yeah,
Lord
everyone who
Maul was
says she
fired.
doesn't hate, secretly hates Star Wars. I'm like, then why does she keep self-inserting herself into every show?
And why does she keep saving all the ones that you actually like?
Yeah,
Like I said earlier, if you like Rogue One, you gotta love Kathleen Kennedy because she saved it.
yeah.
If you like Andor, you gotta like Kathleen Kennedy because she's the one who greenlit Andor.
I know. I was shocked when she greenlit. I was like, who cares about this guy in 2 seasons? And then I watched the first 2 episodes. And when people talk to me, what do you think about Andor? Well, I have to understand the first episode's not that great. So Disney called me up personally and asked me to write to
Right,
green
right. The rest of
the
it.
rest of the series. That's like this is
No,
a
I
show
mean,
personally made for me.
yeah. I recognized Andor was. I recognized Andor immediately as something different and something brilliant and something vital.
Yep.
But I was more stoked for that than anything because I
Mm.
loved what they did with him in Rogue One. I loved Rogue
Yep.
One. I thought that was a perfect. I thought that was going to be a really cool tonal shift over some of the other stuff they were doing. They were going to give the opportunity now for the Gen X guys to get their this kind of Star Wars that they hadn't gotten since they were kids and that they always wanted because they wanted a Star Wars story for adults, right?
Yep.
Okay, so we got one of those, right?
Yep.
And you should thank her for that. But that doesn't mean that because she then also greenlit Skeleton Crew for the 9-year-olds
Yeah. Right.
that she hates you.
Yeah.
Like she's just trying to. It's a
It's a
palette,
business in the end. They have to make
and
money.
and it's and it's a palette in the end. It's a milieu,
Mm.
and it's a world in which it's a canvas on which to tell stories. It's the way George always thought about it.
Mm.
It's why he greenlit so many different types of stories in the early seasons of the Clone Wars. If you
Mm.
don't think that George didn't think that way, go watch season 1 of the Clone Wars again, please.
Yeah.
Okay, or season 2. He was very involved in the Clone Wars all the way through the first 3 seasons in terms of story development.
Mm.
Okay, this is a part that's lost on a lot of people. So he was there to say yes to bringing them all back from the dead. He was there for the Mortis gods storyline, right, where Anakin finds out he was the chosen one.
Mm.
Okay, and which then informs Ahsoka season 1, Rebel season 5, and all of this stuff. Like this is all part of what George would have originally put in his versions of 7, 8, and 9. He said this directly. He said, if I had made the final films, they would have been really weird talking about the origins of the Force and the wills and all this stuff.
Yeah.
And they would have been and no one and everybody would have like
Everyone
George
would have
lost
hated
his
them too.
yeah, and everybody would have thought that George lost his mind. And I'm like, well, I don't know. Or maybe he did, and maybe he didn't.
Mm.
Or maybe he handed all that information to Dave Filoni to then create, a tapestry over the course of all of these story arcs to tell bits and pieces of that story, where the the big budget theater films are about, like they always should be, about they should be a reflection of the political and cultural um, imperatives of the time in which they were created.
Mhm.
Okay, and that's just the way it is. So Star Wars is a very post um, post Vietnam malaise, post 1960s, 1970s, America, you know, with in a world where America is going through a big um, realignment, right? 1999 through 2005, he's talking about the rise of the authoritarian potential of the authoritarian state and
Mhm.
the war on terror and all that stuff. It's what's hit. That's what that's what these kids are growing up, not millennials, but now, yeah. So, and what they're growing up with, right? And then, you know, J.J. Abrams and Larry Kasdan clearly understood that the gender conflict in was happening in 2015. They saw it coming. and they started writing a Star Wars movie around what was happening.
Yep.
And I, for better or for worse, that was the story that they told. And you
Yep.
don't have to like it, but you should at least understand what it is that they were thinking. You can hate it, or you can embrace it for what it is and try and be generous. Because if you're really generous to Ray, you realize that she's a great character and that Daisy Ridley did unfucking believable work. And of the three leads, Poe Dameron was never meant to be a big. He was supposed to die in the first half of the first movie. He wasn't even supposed to survive, right? Um, but Finn was never going to be a. He was never going to be the. He was always meant to be the secondary character,
Yeah.
and Ray was, and, I mean, and don't get me wrong, I like Johnny Boyega. He's a good actor,
Mhm.
and he's good as Finn, but he ain't Daisy Ridley.
Yeah.
Like,
No.
she may be the best actor that's like been in a Star Wars movie.
Hmm.
Because she pulled out depth. She pulled depth out of Ray that wasn't in the script. I mean, Adam Driver is very good as Kylo Ren as well. It's almost
Mhm.
like like Harrison Ford at a certain level, he was better than he's a better actor than the material he's dealing with.
Correct.
Right, right. But and don't get me wrong. I'm not saying I'm not taking anything away from Adam Driver. It's clear that 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 J.J. Abrams knows how to cast a movie. He
Yes, he does.
understands how to. I mean,
I
like,
know you're
dude,
not a Star Trek fan, but I mean, the
oh
guy
no,
who
but
got to play,
his Star Trek is phenomenal. His Star Trek's phenomenal. Like Chris
yeah,
Pine, Zachary
he
Quinto, like that whole
he
fucking
got the
cast,
most
Zoe
perfect DeForest
Saldana,
Kelly impersonator ever. Like,
dude, like the whole Carl Urban, like the
yeah,
whole cast is fucking phenomenal. I love the
right.
first Star Trek movie. I like
Mhm.
the second. I even like it. I actually like all. I actually like those Star Trek films,
Yeah, I like them too.
and I
I think the
like
Flying Adventure.
all.
Their problem is they got too costly for the cast.
Sure. And I go back and I'm not again not a big Star Trek fan, but I do like Wrath of Khan, do like Search for Spock, and do like and I actually didn't even, I mean at the time I was a teenager, so the Voyage Home wasn't bad, the whole Save the Whales thing, but then after a while, like, no, that doesn't work. Other than Catherine Hicks not wearing a bra, that was always good. But and the Undiscovered Country, when Nicholas Meyer comes back with Chris Plummer and the Klingons, that was an excellent film as well.
Oh
And
yeah.
yeah, and there were bits and pieces of the Next Generation films that weren't bad. I never liked Next Generation very much.
Mhm.
I thought seasons 3 and 4 were good because the Klingon Civil War and all that, but the
Yeah.
rest of it is unwatchable hot garbage. I've never watched DS9, even because I'm a Babylon 5 fan, and I won't give them. No matter how good it is, I don't give a shit.
Okay.
And that's that. And I'm going to leave it. I'm just going to leave it at that. One day I may sit down to watch DS9, but there's other stuff I haven't watched yet. So,
There's
um,
one
you know,
episode. My favorite episode of the original series is called "A Taste of Armageddon." I think
mm,
you should watch it and just imagine Captain Kirk as Powell walking into the Fed. Just
interestingly, I've probably seen it because I've seen most of the original recipe. Like,
that's
don't
the
get me
one where
wrong,
it's the one with the disintegration machines.
probably saw. Haven't watched an episode of Star Trek
Yeah,
original
that's
recipe
okay.
in God
But
knows 25
whenever I
years
watch it,
since
that's
I
how
was.
I look
Yeah,
at it. It's Powell
yeah,
walking in there and screwing with all these
mm,
people, with all the bureaucrats.
that's funny. That is really funny. I mean, don't get me wrong. Like, I get the original series was an important thing.
Mhm.
It just wasn't for me. Like,
Yeah.
part of it was creepy when I was a kid. I couldn't watch the Twilight Zone either. By the way,
Mhm. Which one?
um, the Twilight Zone. I couldn't
Oh
watch the
yeah,
Twilight
yeah.
Zone at all. Like,
I can see that why.
but at the same time, one of my favorite movies of all time is the ultimate episode of the Twilight Zone, which is Planet of the Apes. The original Planet of the Apes is a Twilight Zone episode written by Rod Serling, for Christ's sake. It's
Okay.
literally a Twilight Zone episode. It's 2 hours, but it's a Twilight Zone episode. It's the same arc. The
It
whole
is.
twist at the end and everything else it's literally a Twilight Zone episode,
Mhm.
and brilliantly done, and one of my favorite films. And to remind everybody, I think we should probably close out here. One of the things I want to bring up to remind everybody about Star Wars, part of the reason why Star Wars was so cool was that it was our, like I said earlier, it was our thing, right? It was that no one had ever done anything like this before. It was this kind of almost underground thing where we proved Hollywood wrong about all the stuff. George was an it was an outsider. Previous to Star Wars, the only other real film series that ever existed was Planet of the Apes,
Yes.
right? where they tried to tell a story from episode to episode. There was no arc. Obviously, it was just like, they would just reconvene in another writer's room. They get some scripts. They pick one. They go with that one, and they would move on. But always understanding that the idea in Hollywood was that each successive film in the series would make less money, therefore it would have less budget, therefore, in order to preserve the profit margin. And so you watch Planet of the Apes, and you realize that that's exactly what was happening. They
Oh
had
yeah.
no idea. They had no idea what to do in the second movie. The second movie is awful, by the way.
Mhm.
If you have not watched it, the third one is redeemed by a great performance by Roddy McDowall and
Yep.
Kim Hunter. It's a great little movie. And actually, the fourth one is also an excellent little film as well. Conquest of the Planet of the Apes, especially if you've seen not that the extended cut is much better, but the violence is more on screen, and it makes the weight of the Apes Rebellion is more powerful. The
Mhm.
fifth one is unwatchable garbage. Right. So
Did you know that the fifth one's originally supposed to have the bomb in it from the second movie?
mhm, mhm.
Okay.
I did. I knew all this stuff, but I mean, but look at it and look at what they did in Planet of the Apes, and under those circumstances, and you realize that Lucas took that and went, "No, we can do this." And without that, there is no everything else. There is no Harry Potter. There is no, so just like with Babylon 5. Without Babylon
Mhm.
5, there's no BSG. There's no Game of Thrones. There's no this. There's none of this stuff.
Yeah.
And we find that audiences are more are not only are they hungry for great story told in a longer format, they're fiercely defensive of it, and also have unreasonable expectations about the ability to maintain that level of quality over multiple story arcs, which is why it's better to look at Star Wars not as a story, but as a canvas. Because when you do that, it gives you the opportunity, it gives individual storytellers and individual production teams the opportunity to tell great story in their way, so that the Bad Batch, for example, does not compete with the Clone Wars. Even though similar animation style, even though it picks up right after the Clone Wars ends, it's a different story. It's about different things.
Mhm.
It's about fathers and children. It's about child abuse.
Oh wow.
The Bad Batch is explicitly about child abuse.
Mhm.
Okay, if you've not watched the Bad Batch, David, you're missing out, dude. It's some of the
I have
best
my
fucking.
Disney Plus. I'm trying to get through Paradise, and then I'll watch the Bad Batch.
Oh
Okay.
my god, the Bad Batch is so good.
Mhm.
It's so good. And but you have to love animation. You have to love, and again, and you don't need to necessarily watch the Clone Wars in order to be able to watch the Bad Batch. Watch the Bad Batch. Just watch season 7 of the Clone Wars to get yourself reacquainted. They get introduced in the one story arc, and then they move on, right? And it's its own story after that. You don't need to have watched the Clone Wars. You know enough, because there's no overlap. None of the characters survive. So there's no appearances by Obi-Wan. How did he get there? Or Maul, how did he get? None of that stuff. It's a self-contained thing in its own corner of the universe, and it's well done, and it's explicitly about how children are are victimized during times of crisis like this.
Mhm.
And I think I think it's a very valid story for Star Wars to tell. I think it's a
Yep.
vital story for Star Wars to tell, especially for, to tell it to teenagers who are about to become parents.
Right. Okay.
So,
A couple of little minor things. I don't know
mm,
if you ever know why that Mark Hamill asked why Alec Guinness wanted to play Obi-Wan Kenobi, because he's like, I get it why I'm here. I'm a
right,
struggling young actor, but
right.
you're Alec Guinness. What the? He hasn't got his knife
Mhm.
quite good yet, but he said, and he's like, oh, I always wanted to play wizard in an adventure story.
I see. I never heard that. I always heard that that Guinness thought it was like the dumbest thing imaginable, and he demanded points of the gross in order to even do the movie in the first place, which he did, and it wound up making him a unbelievable amount of money.
Yeah,
Like
yeah, an unbelievable
Alec
amount of
Guinness
money.
Alec Guinness died with he made like $100 million with the Star Wars. So it was
The equivalent of today's money, yes.
yeah, right.
No, Mark Hamill apparently went up there and said, why the hell are
Mm,
you here for this? And he's like, I'm here because I've always wanted to play a wizard in an adventure story.
Well, good, and he did a wonderful job with it. And
Yeah.
interestingly enough, there's a recent fan film done with AI where
Mhm.
they did a live action retell of the Rebels episode where Obi-Wan kills Darth Maul with
Mhm.
Ezra.
Okay.
It only came out a couple of weeks ago. I happened to pop into my feed the other day, and they did a brilliant job of getting Alec Guinness as Obi-Wan at that. The AI did a wonderful job of rendering it.
Mm.
Um, and it works really well. It's not perfect, but you're watching this and you're like, okay, as good as Twin Sons is, which is the name of that episode, it's an amazing episode,
Mm.
and maybe one of the best. Um, to watch it in live action like that with an AI version of Alec Guinness and Ray Park,
I'll have to check it out.
it really hit hard.
Yeah.
Really hit hard. It's cool.
And
It's a cool thing.
yeah. And I had a question from the audience here.
Mm.
How do you feel about anime and how it's been competing very well against current year Hollywood? Do
I
you have any
like
thoughts on it?
I like bits and pieces of anime. I am a huge fan. I've said this many times. I am a huge fan of all of the Ghost in the Shell anime stuff.
Mhm.
Okay, so starting with standalone complex, understand like Star Wars is my favorite movie, and Star Wars and Empire my favorite movie, then Patton, then a variety of others. In television, it's Babylon 5, and a close second is standalone complex.
Okay.
Okay. And so there's bits and pieces of anime that I've watched over the years that I really, really like. I'm not a huge fan. I think that whole series is so well done. Again, the people who work on all aspects of Motoko's story care so much about Motoko that they do their best work, even if it's not always, if each individual episode isn't brilliant or whatever. So those 2 seasons of standalone complex are great. Arise, Borders 1 through 4, the Pyro 4 Cult, new movie, phenomenal. Really, really fucking good. And completely different, more of a and again, the prequel. So you get this whole story of Motoko from the beginning to the end, where it all feeds right into the original anime, the Ghost in the Shell movie, the Masamoto movie, or no, whatever his name is, Shiro's movie. And then I like Akira. Like
Mhm.
I really liked actually Space Battleship Yamato. The
Yep.
Star Blazers remake was phenomenal. The 21.99, unbelievably good. And a couple others that I've watched over the years. My daughter's been trying to get me to watch Full Metal Alchemist all the way through, and I got most of the way through season 1 with her the last time I was down in Florida with her. I haven't watched it on my own since. It's good. It's very good.
Yeah, I've seen some
It's
of it.
but it's my problem. I prefer, as an older watcher, I prefer the less, I would say the less ADHD style animes.
Mm.
Like I've watched Mob Psycho with her and a couple of others. Like my daughter really likes that style of that mixed animation, that really
Mm.
high intensity anime. It's not as much for me. It's very
Mm.
difficult for me to watch. I prefer the more languid pace of of uh, the Ghost in the Shell stories,
Mm.
and I really like Star Wars Visions. Like I thought, there's a lot of those stories were very, very well done, and and then of course, let's the Studio Ghibli movies are fucking amazing. Like let's not mince words here. Like Howl's Moving Castle or Howl's Moving Castle and Spirited Away and all those are so good. I mean, they're so good, and so yeah.
Okay, great. Well, I don't want to drag out your afternoon too much more.
Mm.
But it's been great
I gotta
talking to
go.
you.
I gotta go write an issue of my newsletter for Newsmax. As a matter of fact, I'm behind, so I need to go do that.
Yeah,
So
no problem.
yeah.
It's been great having you on here. I hope you like nerding out with me,
I do. I loved it.
and let's try to do this again sometime. Whenever you need to get
I
away
mean,
from all the.
yeah. Well, the problem is that I'll nerd out and I'll tell you the exact same stories I just told you. There's not that much more to tell. I think I've said my piece on Star Wars many, many times, and I'll be happy to say them again. But I mean,
No,
I don't
well,
think
we can
anything.
talk about other things and other
Sure,
nerdy
sure,
things
sure.
we like to talk
Oh,
about.
we can talk about Babylon 5 for 6 hours, and then
Yeah,
and then
exactly. So maybe that'll be
there's a
next
show.
time we get together. We'll
Maybe we do that. Maybe
start
we do
on
that.
the Coming in the Shadows in the first season of Babylon 5.
My favorite episode of B5. Want to know what my favorite episode is? Not the best episode. My favorite episode. It's
Okay,
the
which one
geometry.
is?
It's the geometry of shadows.
Oh, okay.
Green,
Mhm.
purple. It's
Yeah.
it's the episode that does the best job of highlighting everything that Babylon 5 did well.
Mhm.
Horror, space opera, comedy, it's all in that one episode. And then the political commentary, obviously, the Drazi are hilarious,
Yeah.
and it's of course because it's an Ivanova episode, and it doesn't. I mean, come on, like what is that terrible sound? Not an opera. Oh my god! Like
Yeah.
yes,
I
give me
take it
more
you've
of that.
done deep dives into the Lurker's Guide.
Oh, well, I was a part of the Workers Guide when it first was
Okay.
happening.
I only discovered it after I think the fourth
Oh
or fifth
no,
season.
I was there while it was happening.
Ah.
So yeah, I remember reading all of the JMS posts like while that was happening. Yeah, no, we were there with B5 as was coming out. I discovered I got into the B5 right early in the second season. So somebody brought season 1 over right after season 2 started airing. They brought season 1 over. We watched it on videotape, and we mainlined it, and then we were
Mhm.
up to date with the show after.
I was there for the
What's that?
first episode.
Yeah, and then I got
Midnight on the
cable,
firing line.
and then I got cable simply so I could watch Babylon 5.
Hmm.
We,
Okay.
we went
Well,
up, we would
actually,
we would go over to our friend's house to watch it through seasons 4 and then through ones through 4, and then when it moved to TNT, we got cable for the first time ever after college to watch B5.
Mhm.
That's how much we love B5.
Okay.
All
Well,
right.
if you guys love this kind of stuff, tune in, like, share, subscribe, and be sure to check out Tom Luongo's stuff on Gold Goats and Gun. Why don't you do your thing there?
Yep. It's just Gold Ghosts and Guns. HomLuongo.me is the blog. TFL1728 on Twitter, where I will talk about Star Wars. And if you have questions or comments, or you hate or love anything I had to say about them, drop me a note. Be respectful, though, please, and we'll have
Yeah,
a
the only one allowed to be
conversation.
mean on X is Tom.
Well, but if you're, I'm very, very, I give what I get. So if you're a dick, guess what? But if you're nice and you want to have an actual conversation about things, I'm more than happy to do so. I love talking about Star Wars on Twitter.
Okay.
It just
And
rarely happens that we get a decent conversation.
yeah, so that's the show for